In my extended hiatus from making content, I've been watching a lot of VTubers. During a collab stream between HoloLive's Kronii, Ollie, and Kronii, I decided to analyze the match live with my friends. Afterwards, they said it helped make the stream more exciting, so I decided to make a video about the match. Then, 2 months passed. But hey, better late than never. There's probably some things we should straighten out before we dive into these games. The first is that both Kronii and Ollie are by all means beginner players. Don't expect super serious chess or anything, this is just some fun between friends. The second is that I myself am a beginner player. I'm going to speak authoritatively, after all, I have the microphone, but I am by no means an expert. But as always, I've done my best to do my research. So let's get into game 1. Here, Kronii has the white pieces and Ollie has the black pieces. E4. Immediately, Ollie is excited to see someone play a normal opening. I don't know how much HoloLive chess content you've watched, but the openings tend to be a little dubious, so seeing a normal opening is probably something of a relief. Or maybe she's just happy Kronii played into her prep. E5, symmetry, knight a3. Now knight a3 is not a great move for a couple reasons. Generally in the opening you want to fight for the center with a move like knight c3 or knight f3. And generally you don't want your knights on the edge of the board, because they control way fewer spaces than a knight in the center would. Knight c6, Ollie showing exactly what I'm talking about. Look at this nice center control here. And knight c4, Ollie moving her knight to attack the pawn. Knight f6, Ollie attacking Kronii's pawn, Ollie playing very principled chess here. And d3 defending. Bishop c5 developing a bishop, and bishop g5 pinning this knight to the queen. Except it's not actually pinning the knight, and this move is a blunder. Why? Because it turns out this knight's not pinned at all. You can just take. The queen's not hanging, because if you have take, you have bishop takes f2 check. King can't take because it's defended. This is the only move. Checkmate. This is insane. I would not expect any beginner player to spot that. It's absolutely ridiculous, but very cool. And by the way, if you don't take the queen, decide to take the knight instead, this is just hanging. So black is not only up a pawn, but also just way up in development, which is fantastic. We do not get that move. Instead, we get h6 taking the bishop. Ollie says this is one of the things she learned from her chess mentor, to not get scared of these kinds of attacks. This is obviously not as good as just mating the white king, but it's still a very solid position for black. Bishop h4 running away, g5 chasing the bishop, and knight f3. Now knight f3 looks like it's defending the bishop, but what it's really doing is offering a trade of a bishop for a pawn, which is less than great. It's really just hanging a bishop. Ollie doesn't see that, instead plays knight d4, offering a trade of knights. And knight c takes e5, Kronii insisting on the gambit of the bishop on h4. Knight takes f3 check. Ollie says that if Kronii won't trade knights, then fine, she'll do it herself. G takes f3 taking the knight. d6. Again, Ollie forgoing the bishop to attack Kronii's knight. I can understand that. It's in a pretty annoying spot, but the bishop's not going to stay there forever, you know? And in fact, there it is. Bishop g3, moving the bishop away. D takes e5, bishop takes e5, bishop b4, check. c3 defending and kicking the bishop, bishop c5, bishop getting kicked. Computer suggests bishop d6 instead, trying to trade off Kronii's dark square bishop. Since it's in kind of an annoying place, it's pinning the knight to the rook, generally very uncomfortable. d4, continuing the attack on the bishop, bishop b6, only moving the bishop to a safe space. Bishop b5 check. Computer prefers trying to get your moves out with moves like h4, a4. Just trying to start taking pawns here as well. Bishop b5 check just kind of gets the bishop kicked by c6. Bishop a4, bishop e6. At this point, Ollie remarks that Kronii's pawns are annoying, and yeah, they sure as hell are. Look at this space. The structure is super solid, everything's defended. You know, the awesome pawn structure from Kronii, really making use of the structure to make up for the piece that she's down currently. Bishop b3, Kronii probably thinking if takes, then takes and the rook gets to come out, but that doesn't really work because most of these spaces are either defended or just not very good spaces for the rook to be on. And knight d7. Now the knight's attacking the bishop, but remember we said that that knight was pinned to the rook, so now Kronii can take on h8. This not only hangs a whole rook, it also pokes the piece that's going to take it. So it's like if Ollie tapped Kronii on the shoulder to look for bishop moves. So Kronii finds bishop d6, the complete wrong move. This does kind of jam her bishop down Ollie's throat, stops Kronii from castling over here. And the space is safe for now, but if it really bothers Ollie, she can play bishop c7 at any time to trade it off and get her choice of castling direction. Queen f6, Ollie going for the only weakness in Kronii structure, like this area over here. e5 defending the bishop, and queen f5 setting up moving into Kronii's territory. Bishop c2 continuing the attack on Ollie's queen and actually almost trapping it. Look at this. Queen f4, only safe space. Bishop b3, Kronii taking her foot off the gas. c5 looking for a pawn break. d5 attacking the bishop on e5. If Ollie takes, there's just a whole bishop hanging. And suddenly the material's basically even. Instead, Ollie has to spot that Kronii kind of ruined her own structure, and this e-pawn is hanging. Instead, we get bishop f5, bishop f4, pinning the knight. Now there's a couple good moves in this position. There's castling queenside. Notice that this bishop does not actually control any of the squares that the king has to move through, so castling's totally legal here. There's c4, just taking space with this pawn. It's pretty solid. But Ollie spends about 3 seconds and plays queen takes e5, which eagle-eyed viewers among you may notice hangs an entire queen. Kronii promptly capitalizes on this by taking. Castle queenside seems reasonable, but actually happens to hang the exact same rook to the exact same piece. So with her second chance to take a free rook, Kronii plays b4. It's a queenside pawn attack. I kind of get it, but it's just not as good as taking an entire rook. Kronii actually considers bishop takes d7 check here. This move right here. The computer likes this because it removes the piece that was attacking the bishop, but we get b4 instead, which is fine. Knight takes e5, losing the bishop since it was hanging. Queen e5 attacking the hanging knight. This move's not great because it actually gives Ollie back the initiative after a move like knight d3 check to defend it. And suddenly Ollie is back on the offense and Kronii's kind of on the back foot. We don't get that. We get h5, which is just completely ignoring the threat on the knight. So we get takes. Rook h to e8. This looks awesome. It's pinning the queen to the king, which means like this isn't going anywhere. That's going to get taken. Except for the problem that I completely miss is bishop takes e8. Big mistake. That is a hung rook. Ollie doubles down on her mistake by taking with the rook, which just hangs the other rook. Takes with check. And then Kronii just starts eating all of Ollie's pieces. It just continues in this particular manner until at this point, once Kronii takes her last bishop. Absolutely fantastic game 1. Love Ollie's solid opening. She almost managed to carry that momentum straight to victory, but was unfortunately stopped by a big blunder and had to watch Kronii run away with the game. The players swapped sides for game 2. So here, Ollie has the white pieces and Kronii has the black pieces. e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. The Eric Rosen fans among you might be getting hype right now, but unfortunately knight takes e5 is not played. I don't think either of these players knows what a Stafford Gambit is. Instead, we get d4, knight h5. Kronii once again going for these weird knight maneuvers. Here, Ollie can still just take the hanging e-pawn. Bishop e2. This is kind of the wrong bishop to move because Ollie blocked it in with d3. Developing the other bishop, or just taking the pawn, would be better. Knight f3, and now we get knight takes e5. But it actually doesn't work anymore because of this awesome move. Knight takes g2 check. It wins the pawn back, and the king's forced to move, which means that Ollie loses castling rights. Absolutely fantastic, but we don't get that move. Instead, we get d6, kicking the knight. Knight c4, not hanging a knight. b5, attacking the knight again. Here, Ollie has bishop takes f4, because the knight's just hanging. But instead, we get the knight backing off from the attack. c6 defending the hanging pawn, and now we get bishop takes f4. Fantastic. g5 attacking the bishop, bishop g3 backing off from the attack, and d5 fighting for the center. Knight c3. Now these knights are incredibly sad. Every forward space these knights could go to is covered. And Kronii actually has the move b4, forking the knights. Kronii does spot the fork, but she plays bishop to b4, which is just not as good. It does pin the knight to the king, though. And the knight on a3 prevents the bishop from getting kicked the way that it was last game. Then we have bishop f3, g4, attacking the bishop that just moved, and bishop back to e2. You might think you can just take the pawn, but it turns out it's defended from all the way back here. Ollie spots this, which is funny because Kronii either doesn't see it herself or is trying to trick Ollie into taking the pawn anyway. Rook f8, which doesn't really do anything. You might want the rook to be like on the empty file or something. f3, bishop d6. F takes g4, taking the free pawn. Now if Kronii takes, she just loses a whole bishop. That's just a clean hang. Rook g8 to attack the pawn. Now that's a much better spot for a rook. And bishop f3, now that the space isn't being attacked by a pawn, we can move our bishop back. Knight a6, developing the knight. Ollie realizes her knights are in trouble and decides to start evacuating them. Knight to e2. The problem is this breaks the defense of the queen on the pawn, which Kronii immediately capitalizes on with rook takes g4, bishop takes, and now the knight is pinned to the queen. Queen d2, breaking the pin, bishop c4, attacking the queen, defended by the knight. c3, bishop a5, b4, bishop b6. Knight d4 offering an exchange. Oh, knights don't move that way. Bishop takes knight. Kronii tells Ollie that sounds like a pretty bad idea because Ollie has more pieces, which is a fantastic observation about trading that is absolutely correct. Instead, we see bishop c7. Knight takes c6, queen d7, attacking the knight. E takes d5, queen takes d5, and queen e2 check, which makes Ollie 2 for 2 at queen blunders. Bishop takes e2, king takes e2, queen takes e6, c4, and fantastic move, queen takes g2 check. Taking a pawn, checking the king, infiltrating with the queen, absolutely great all-around move. King e3, and castle queenside, bringing the rook to the party. Super solid conversion so far. C takes b5, and there's forced checkmate in 6 here, but it's really hard to calculate, so I'm not going to blame anyone for not spotting it. Rook e8 check. King d4, and instead of any of the checks she could give, Kronii plays f6, I guess not playing f5, because she wants to savor her victory. B takes a6, rook d8 check, which is a blunder, because after king c3, the king's actually pretty safe. There's not really any more checks for black to give. However, instead, we get king c4, f5, rook a f1 to defend the pawn, queen d5 check, and this is why the king needed to be on this square. King c3 and queen takes f2, which is a blunder, because now that the queen is all the way in the corner, you can play knight c4, blocking the queen off the diagonal and basically making it so it doesn't get to play the game anymore. Now Ollie can initiate an attack, and suddenly Kronii's barely even winning anymore. This is just a super fantastic move. But she doesn't see it. Instead, we get knight b5. This forks the pawn and the bishop. Queen d5, bringing the queen back and preparing queen takes d3 check. Knight takes a7, king b8, and now the knight is totally trapped, which Ollie announces. At this point, Ollie gets to choose the space the knight dies on, and she picks c6, giving one last check. Queen takes c6 check. King d2. Queen takes a6. Kronii just reprising her strategy from last match of just cleaning up all of Ollie's pieces. Rook takes a5. Rook takes d3 check. King e2, and now there is an absolutely savage move here. Rook takes g3, discovered check, and you cannot take. The king has to move. Absolutely incredible. I love tactics like this. However, instead we get queen a2 check, looking to like ladder the king. The problem with this move is it just hangs the rook. King takes d3, and suddenly Kronii isn't winning anymore despite having a queen for 2 rooks. Queen a8 to attack the rook on h1, like all the way here on this long diagonal, but this is Kronii's final mistake because there is rook f8 check skewering the king to win the queen, and after king takes, the bishop is hanging. So Ollie picks that up too. Kronii tries to get a stalemate, but quickly realizes after Ollie brings her rook that she's just going to get laddered after Ollie makes a queen, and on move 48, concedes the game. Unfortunately, we do not get a tiebreaker chess match, but I feel like both of these games showcase a bright future for Holo Chess, as both of these players are actually playing really impressive games of chess, marred by a couple of big blunders. I really hope we continue to see VTubers playing chess. These matches have been an absolute treat to watch. That's it for this one. If you want to see more chess stuff, let me know in the comments. If you want to see more videos like the ones I posted before this one, let me know too. Those videos can be pretty time consuming, and I just wanted to put something out before I forget this channel exists. Thank you so much for watching. See you later.